Hello, welcome to the first of a few short videos to help you navigate your way around Sketchup. First, I'll begin by opening up Sketchup, and you generally get this window where you've got your different templates and a few recent drawings. So later on we're going to go into how you can make up your own template so that you can have pre-organized tabs and components for commonly used items. That way you don't have to set it up in each drawing. But that's a little bit down the track. So I'm just going to go with architectural millimeters, and I'll click on that, which will open a new file. Don't worry about that. You normally won't get that. Okay. So this is how you would normally see SketchUp. Some of you might have a bigger set of tools down the side here, but they're things that you can navigate and work how to set up and bring more tools in. But you really can do most of everything that you need to do with these simple tools here. And I'm going to endeavour to show you how. So SketchUp is generally a very simple app that allows you to really work very quickly. And while there are some architectural programs, there are some engineering programs, you can learn how to use SketchUp to do anything that you want with respect to drawing. The reason being is it's an open source platform. That's how it was originally designed, so that people can make extensions, all right, which is what they call a Ruby plugin. So you can plug the extension in here to give you added functionality to this program. And people will do that for their industry, they will do that for their own manufacturing, they will do that for any number of reasons. But the principle of it is, we've got up here, we've got the select tool, and I'm always going to talk about the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so at the moment, spacebar will select your selection tool, and if you have a look down here, you've got some instructions. And you've also got some added functionality to that. So if you click it and you hold down the Shift key, you can add or subtract. I'm holding it down, I'm letting it go. So if I want to select multiple items, so let's say I've got that, go back to the select tool. I just use the rectangle tool, by the way. If I want to select that, then I want to select this one. You notice that it releases this first one. But if I have one selected, I'll double click to get the face and the bounding lines, and I hit Shift, you'll see the little plus or minus comes up. If I click it again, it will release it. There's the minus. If I click it again, there's the plus. So I can click there, I can click there, I can click. So I will, as long as I'm holding the Shift key down, you see that little plus or minus on the cursor, you will be adding all, and if I selected all the bounding lines separately, but if I come here and I double click, I can select all of them. If it's a 3D object, you have to triple click. And then I let go. Okay, now if I click clear of it. So that's another option to select with the selection tool. Now, if you click and drag from the left to the right, you will only select things that you completely encompass. So if you have a look, I'm selecting and I'm going over this second rectangle, but it's not selecting it. If I go across and if you have a look at the top of the second rectangle, I've completely encompassed one boundary line. You'll see that it selects that one as well. Okay, if you come from the right to the left, anything that the line intersects will be selected, and that includes faces as well as lines. So if you have a look, all of those, so it will pick up the complete. I've only encompassed some of that line and some of that face, but it will pick up that whole line and that whole face. So your select tool is really powerful as well. Now, it's easy here to select everything that you want because we've only got 3, but if you can imagine that you've got a very complex drawing with many things, it's going to become difficult to select, and that's when this one comes in. So there may be something hovering over the top of this that doesn't allow you to select this completely because you don't want to select the other thing and you haven't grouped it yet. Okay, so that's your select tool. The next one is erase tool. Starts with an E, so we'll go E shortcut on the keyboard. And if I go back to spacebar, select tool, go back to E for erase, erase tool. Now with the erase tool, anything you click and so when you do this, you have to click and hold as you're dragging over the line. Anything that you touch will disappear. If it's a grouped object, if I go back to space and I go here, double click, make group. Now I go back to E for erase and I erase just one of those lines, it will select the whole group because you're erasing the group, not just a single line. Next we come to line, which line has anything that here that has a drop down menu has added functionality. So for instance, the select tool, if you're using a mouse, also has a lasso functionality where you can click and drag. So if I go R for rectangle and draw a couple of quick rectangles again, and now I want to select a few, maybe these two and this one, but it's difficult to select all in one go. I can choose to go up to here and select the lasso, which you can see it's got a unique cursor, and I can click and drag to encompass just what I want. But you have to, if you're coming from that side, you have to encompass the whole thing if you're using the lasso. So whatever is complete inside the lasso is what you're going to delete. If we come over to the line tool, let me delete this. The line tool is L for line, spacebar for, you're going to love your spacebar, that'll bring you back to select. L for line, spacebar. So L for line will give you, you can click and release, and that gives you this functionality, escape. Or you can click and hold, and then when you release, it releases. Also note that anytime you draw something, the dimensions of it will be down here in the bottom right hand corner where you can see my cursor. So oftentimes I don't try and draw exactly what I need. I'll know the dimension that I want if I haven't already set up guidelines. I will, so let's say for argument's sake I want a 1 meter long line. I'll click, start dragging, type in 1000 and hit enter, and that's a 1 meter line. And you're going to use this in this application in particular with drafting. You're going to be typing in your values far more than anything else. And then if you want to release this, you just hit the escape key on your keyboard. All right. I find a lot of people click, drag, try and get the exact millimeter number. You don't have to. Just let go and type in the exact millimeter number that you want. Okay. Now, you can also use the abbreviation of the length. So this is set up in millimeters, this template. But I can also click a line, come over here and write 4M for meters, hit enter, and it'll draw a 4 meter long line because it recognizes the lengths. I can put a line here and go for km, no, it won't allow me to put kilometers in. But if I can go 4 millimeters, hit enter, it'll do a very short 4 mm, enter. If I zoom in, you'll see here, tools, dimensions. If I click and come over to that point there, I've actually drawn 2 4 millimeter lines. It's just the scale of the drawing that I'm drawing out here, you really can't see it. Okay. Then with the lines you also have the freehand mode, and in the freehand mode you can click, you have to hold, you can't click and release, but you click and you hold. Where this is absolutely excellent is if you want to draw gradient lines on a PDF that you've imported. Okay, so I'm scrolling my wheel to zoom out. I'm going to press R for rectangle and do a hypothetical image that I've brought in. And let's imagine it's got a whole series of gradients along here, and I can use my line tool in freehand mode to trace the lines . A lot easier, so you can be very quick. Actually, that's another thing that I will say to you, would be start outside your image, come through and trace your image, because it's difficult to, here I'm starting on an inference, these are called inferences, where it will recognize and snap to a line, an end point. You'll see that they're distinctly different. A midpoint is blue. There you go. There's a midpoint. All right. endpoint is green. Diamonds are on the face, all right, and then you can have on the face outside a group. So there's a whole lot of things there, and use these because sometimes you think you're clicking onto the end and you might be 0.5 millimeter away, and because you're drawing something that is 20 or 30 meters big, then you'll have issues later on that it's not actually a closed group to be able to form a 3D model. So you make sure that you get these inferences so that you are actually snapping. And what I'm doing here by starting outside and crossing, so you've got to imagine that I'm tracing some lines on a PDF document, and you can break it up into smaller things, come back to the endpoint and keep going. If they're, let's say, for instance, I've seen some contour lines that are actually quite detailed, and that was easy to do for me because I wasn't actually tracing anything. But if I was tracing an actual line, I'd have to break it to be accurate. I would zoom in and I would try and break this up into smaller sections, all right? But if I click the space bar, I come back and I select a line, you see that these lines are separate, whereas these are complete. What you want to do is click, shift, click, and then if you come to right click, you can weld these edges. So now it is one long face. Okay, so if you need to break up something very complicated into many steps, you can come back later, select them all and weld them so that they're one line. Okay, now we can come with the eraser tool, so E, and we can clean up these edges. So now, if you want to, let's say these are all 500 millimeter increments, so 5, 1, 15, 2, 25, 3, 35, 4, 45, 5. So if I go there, up 5 meters, this next one 4,500, next one 4,000, next one 3,500, enter, next one 3,000, enter, next one 2,500, enter, next one 2,000, enter, next one 1,500, enter, next one 1,000, enter, oops, Control Z to undo. Sorry, this one's 2,000, this one's 1,500, this one is 1,000, this one is 500. Okay, so now orbit, O for orbit. Now we've got some contour lines. Okay, and we can use the sandbox to make that smoother. That's coming up later. But that's the functionality you've got from the freehand tool. So don't forget about that one. It's very often not used because it doesn't really have a lot of functionality for what we do, but there are some use cases that make it a very powerful tool. Next, we've got the arc tool. Now the arc also has a drop down, there's 4. So let's start with the first one. The first one is a 2-point arc. Okay, so what you'll find is you'll come in, select that one, you'll find the point that you want, you click once, you click twice, and then you draw an arc. Okay. So where that might come handy, let's say we have a rectangle and we want to do an internal fillet. I will click on the corner. I will go over to arc, which I'm not sure what the, let me see if, I don't know the shortcut, the keyboard shortcut for arc is. I don't really use the, hold on a second, there, select the center point, use option plus or option minus to change the number of sections. Okay, so that's relevant too. I'll explain that in a section. So if I click on here, and I draw there, now I can hit E and I can erase these. So that's how you could use it. Now we're doing drafting, so everything that we do is by dimensions. So let's say that's got to be 1 meter. If I click and let go, I come in the direction I want to start in and I type in 1000, enter, and that gives me a very accurate dimension that I want. I come over to intersect. There's the little symbol for intersection of the line, is a little cross and quarter circle, and I'll click. All right, so now it's accurate. Another thing that you might have noticed is when I click and let go and I come out to here, once I click again and I start to move, you'll see the angle down the bottom right hand corner. Now I can use that to type any angle I want, 41 degrees, enter, and there's the angle that I want. Okay. Okay, now down the bottom here, click or drag to select objects. Shift equals add or subtract. Option equals add. Shift plus option equals subtract. Okay, so what that means is, if you have a look here in the window, if I come down to entity info, every time you draw something, it's an entity. So if we select on that, you'll find that it comes up as an entity. It's untagged at the moment. The radius is 1000 millimeters and it's got 12 segments. So Sketchup only works with straight lines. It doesn't have true arcs. All right. So what will happen is if I change that, you'll see the segments. If I change that to 4, enter, you'll see here that it's 4 big stepped sections. All right. If I select 24, enter, there's that many small sections that it appears as a smooth circle. Okay, so that's something to, I used to go crazy and put 99 or 999 so that it was absolutely, but there's really no need for that. So that's the 2-point arc. Now if I select, sorry, that's the arc. If I select the 2-point arc, what I do is along any point, so if you've got a straight line, I can click. If you have a look here, tangent to edge, I can click. Now I can drag it out. So here I'm going on the red axis. But if I use my modifier keys, your arrow keys, so if I click on the up arrow is the blue, so it'll lock me. I can't come this way anymore. It'll lock me to that, and this is going to be a really helpful tool for you, by the way. And it'll lock you to, now don't worry that the segments are staggered like this. If you need to do something that's 4 meters, you can go later and change the segment so that it looks smooth. Okay, so don't worry that it looks segmented. You're not stuck there. If I use my left arrow key, the constraint is not appropriate at this time because the left is the green axis, and the green axis, if you have a look when I come down flat, is where I've chosen it. So I can't make the arc go in this direction pulling on the green axis. If I go down, all right, down is parallel to, it's constrained to the intersection plane. And the right hand side will be the red axis. And again, I can't come up, I can only go sideways, left or right, in line with this plane. Okay, so they're your arrow keys on the keyboard. You often are trying to come up, all right, but if I click that again, it releases, and it's not, see how it's no longer a thick line. It will snap between them, and sometimes it'll give you a really awkward shape. So for instance here, I've clicked on this line which is a part of this plane. So I can only really go in this plane and in the blue plane, which is up. And see how I'm finding it hard to make sure I snap to the right plane? That's where your modifier key comes in. I want up, which is the blue axis most of the time. So I click the up arrow and that will lock me in that constraint. That'll constrain me to that axis. Okay, so use your modifier keys, use your tools to draw quickly. Don't try and guess and remain frustrated with it. It doesn't serve any purpose. All right, I'll click escape. So that's a 2-point axis. And if I go click, let's escape. If I go, let's say I'm not on any plane. All right, now I'm trying to go up, but I find it difficult to line up with that one. Then I can go along the green axis or the red axis, but there you go. I tried to go on the red and I can't because the angle that I've picked this at, I'm not perpendicular to the red, so I can't constrain to that one. On the bottom plane, I'm on the blue plane, so I can constrain to the up arrow, but none of the others will work because I'm not perpendicular. This tool requires you to pull perpendicular to the line, the imaginary line between the 2 points. Okay, the next arc is a 3-point arc. 1, 2, and then you can pull your circle this way. Again, you can click on an angle or you can complete the circle, which it won't complete because you're not doing the circle, you're doing an arc. You could type in 360, which would give it complete. And again, don't worry too much about the segments. You can change that later. So you can come in here, you can change that to say 48 segments. Sorry, we'll see here, I don't have a grouped section, so it's actually cut through there. All right, so let's say I'll do that one again, the 3-point arc, 1, 2, and then it pulls along there, 3. And if you notice, it's an open arc. If you want to draw something or find its center, let's say I want to draw a line, if I just hover over the edge or an end point, you'll see that it will show you where my center point is. And if I come close to that area, it'll snap to it. If I come close to it, it'll show me and then snap to it. So now I can draw a line to there if I want. Escape. All right. And the inverse of that tool is the next one, is the pie. So the inverse of that tool is click, come across and click. And that gives you a closed group. So that would be effectively kind of the inverse of this one. All right. So where would that help? So let's go pie there. Escape. Let's say I want to draw a door along here. I know the door, I want to be from the center. I want to draw out. If I type in 920 because it's a 920 door, if I hit enter, that comes to there. Now I come down to intersect, and here I've drawn very quickly a door. Okay, let's say the door is not in the right position. I can click spacebar for select. I can select the whole lot. I can hit M for move. And if I click and drag along that line, because it's sticky, all right, and if you want to constrain it to the red axis to make sure that you don't stuff it up, you can move it like this. You can snap to a grid line and so on there. But do remember that it is sticky because you have two ungrouped faces and you put a line across a line and they stick together. That's the nature of SketchUp. Now we go to rectangle. Let me get rid of these. Rectangle for me is the most used tool that I use. So if I click on rectangle, it also has a drop down and I've got rectangle, rotated rectangle, circle or polygon. Okay, so if I use a rectangle, I will often quickly give myself a plane to draw on. So for argument's sake, I can draw a line, and I think I'm drawing on a flat line, but I'm actually not. If I try and do the same thing over here, spacebar for select tool, L for line. If I want to draw a similar drawing to that line, because I'm drawing on a face, I know that I'm on that face because it sticks to it. It's sticky geometry. SketchUp is sticky geometry. So don't just start drawing something. Give yourself a plane. What I normally do, so that it doesn't interrupt, the second I draw some geometry, I select everything in that plane, I make a group. Now to draw on this, I can just draw on top, or I double click inside. Now it won't stick to anything outside the line. So these lines here, it's not sticking to them. So I'm drawing inside that group. If I double click that and I move it, you'll notice that it doesn't stick to those lines. It'll stick to these lines, but these lines here are outside the group. You can tell that you're inside a group because you'll see a bounding box, but you're inside that group. So I often will give myself a plane to draw on, and now I can draw, let's say I'm doing a profile for decking. I'll do a rectangle that's 140 by 19, enter. Sorry, 140, comma, 19, enter. And there's my profile for a decking board in timber. Let's make it a tongue and groove decking board for argument's sake. So let's say I'll just, for argument's sake, use the freehand I'll just put there, undo, undo. I've got to cross the lines so I can erase them later. E for erase, I'll just get rid of these, undo, zoom in, I'll just get rid of these little extra tags. Now if I, for argument's sake, I will double click, right hand, make a group. I can then move, and all of you that are asking about the array tool, if I click option on the Mac keyboard, I'm not sure what it is on the Windows keyboard, but there's only about 2 or 3 keyboards left with the space bar. Give one of them a try. Option, you'll see a little plus. So if I just click on that face there, come over to here, then hit times 5, enter. You'll see that I've got flooring, tongue and groove flooring now. Now if I explode, if I do this, double click, right hand, if I do this as a component, actually edit, I can't redo. Alright, so I'll go there, make a group. This is a quick thing about the move, option, click, click, times 5, enter. Now I want to extrude them out. I double click into this one, see how the others are now grayed out, and I'm inside this one. P for push pull. Now I bring out the wood plank, but I've got to do that for each one of these. If I explode this for now, if I double click, right click and make a component, I'll put decking timber, be as defined as you can. All of these things do have a use in, just make sure that replace selection with component, alright, is that one. And all of these you'll eventually learn what to do with them, but just leave the default setting and just hit create. Now if I take this, and these are all going to be identical, and I move, hit option, so that the plus, I'll come across to here, to there, times 6, enter. Now because they're a component, any alterations that I make to one of them will happen to all of them. So you've got to be careful how you're going to use components, okay, because it will change everything on every instance of that component. So if I P for push pull, I bring them up, now I make my whole deck. Okay. Alright, so there's your rectangle tool. Very powerful. So that's my most used tool. Then you've got rotated rectangle. Sometimes you've got a rectangle so that doesn't want to line up with the predetermined axis, because when you saw before, when I pull, I'll go back to it, I'll click R for rectangle. When I do that, it lines up. It lines up. I can't do, let's say I want to do one sort of diagonally spaced, I can't. Okay. But if I select the rotated rectangle, I can click the angle I want. Now, I don't know what's happening there. Let's see what happens. Oh, here we go. It's on, I was drawing on that axis. Okay, so there will be a lot of use cases for this one. Sometimes you want to do a rectangle to create a plane for you to draw something on, and it's a really weird angle. That's how you're going to go about it. Okay. The next one is a circle. It clicks in the center and goes out. Alright, so again you can inference and lock that to any of the that's the red, that's the green, so I can lock it. I can lock it if I want to. Let's say there's something over here that I want to lock to, and I don't want to. I'll give you an example. I want to use my inference locking, so I'm going to go to rectangle, and I've got a rectangle. All right. Now, for some reason, I know that I want to do a circle. Actually, yes, C on the keyboard is circle, and I want to start the circle here and finish the circle here. I don't know what that dimension is, and I don't have to. So typically, what you would do is do some guidelines. So you'd run a guideline here, and you'd go from there. You don't have to. You can inference it here, and when I come out, I can hover over this one here, and let's say I want to lock in this axis. I can come over and lock to here because it's not going to drag the circle across this way. It's going to stay on that one plane or on that plane. I can still lock to this one, or if I want the radius to come out to this one because I want a tangent point here. Okay, so if you lock the axis using your what they call modifier keys, your arrows, using your arrows on your keyboard, you can lock it in place. Okay, hit the same button again to release it. All right, there's your circle, and again I click on that add here. I've got sticky geometry here, so if I look at it, when I click on the outside, I've cut into it here. It shows me how many segments, and I can change that amount of segments, but you'll find that it'll change the segments here, but not in here, because coming across a line that's not already grouped has caused it to stick to it, and now it's separated. So this is an arc, and this is an arc. Okay, so it still responds like an arc. So if I, let's say, change that to 15,000, it changes the diameter. It doesn't change the diameter of this one, however. This one here would have to change the diameter separately. So be very careful when you're drawing circles that you want it to remain a circle. Sometimes it might be better to see there to the dimensions I want, double click, make it a group, and then move. I can hover over the external line until it shows me the center line, come in, and it'll snap to it. So I can grab the center line, bring the center line to where I want it. Okay, and then if I do that, to change the number of segments or the radius, okay, I've got group, one in the model. If I double click, now it's trying to show you that these faces are shared, but they're not touching. So if I click on the outside, that's a complete circle. I can change that to, let's say, 56 segments. It's a smooth circle, but even though they're intersecting these lines, they haven't separated it into two separate arcs. It still remains, as the entity says, a circle. You can change the radius, and so I often, until I'm sure that I don't want to lose the functionality of a circle anymore, and I want it to become part of that new geometry, I keep it grouped and separate. Once I want it to be part of that new geometry, then I'll explode it, and now it is separate, separate, separate. They still behave as arcs, separate and separate. Okay, but it's now part of that geometry. Okay, very difficult to change that now, as you would be able to in parametric drawing. Okay, now we go to the push-pull tool, which you've seen me use. It's P on the keyboard. So if I go rectangle, circle, rectangle and circle, let's go for that. Let's go for polygon, and we'll pick 3 sides before I start drawing. And sorry, I should have hit enter. Control Z, number of sides 3, enter. Let's try again, sides 3, enter. There we go. And you can see there that it's drawing 3 sides. Now I want to, let's go polygon again. I want to change that to 48 sides, enter. Let's try again, 48, enter. And you see the little icon has now changed to 48 sides. And it's got the inscribed radius down there, so you can pull. Don't have to click a second time, you can just type in 500 and you've got the size that you want. Okay. And your push-pull tools, when we're up to, so that's P on your keyboard. Anytime you see a face, you should be able to, so pull on it, pull, add a dimension, enter, and it does that. If you've typed in a dimension or even let go, if you just double click on the next one, it remembers that last height that you put in. Okay. If you want, let's say for rectangle, we've got one here, push pull. If we select tool, click it 3 times, right click and make a group or a component, group to start with. Now if I bring over the push pull tool, P on the keyboard, you'll see a little cross with a line through it. It's already been grouped. You can't affect these lines, you can't change these lines until you click inside the group. So back to the space bar for the select tool, double click, you can see the bounding box now. Now you can't affect anything outside the bounding box. You can measure, let's say we want to put a guideline, I'll go tape, I'll use a guideline. So reference it from something outside, but I can't draw or change anything outside that bounding box. I can only change the things inside the bounding box. So I might do this, for instance. Another rectangle. I want to do P for push pull again, and I want to affect that. Okay. Now, these guidelines can't be erased because you see when I select the guidelines, they're in here. So if I E for erase, if I try and delete these, it won't delete them. If I try and delete a line here, I delete the whole group. Okay, so to get rid of these lines, select tool, double click. Now I can erase and get rid of those guidelines because they were inside the group. Okay, so that's your push-pull tool. Your offset tool, so here I can't do anything because I'm not inside the group. This one here hasn't been grouped yet. So you'll see your face, you'll see the line jump to, you'll see the red circle jump to a line that it's offsetting from, but you have to select a face. So if I click on here and I drag in and out, you can see my offset tool, and it's going to offset the distance that I type, or I can just freehand click, but the distance that I type will be from that reference line that the cursor will start it on. So here, let's say I'll go, I'll offset 500. Enter, and it snaps to there. Now the distance from this line to this line is 500. Okay, so I can do the same here. There. So you can see how that would be, and then I can P for push pull. You can see how that things like that can help you to be able to draw very quickly. All right. Now the move tool. The move tool. Now the move tool, if nothing is selected, it will grab. It'll lock to an inference point. Here the end point. Here the midpoint. Here, one of the segments, the end point on a segment. Here, the end point here, or on the edge. But because these aren't grouped, here's the sticky geometry. Look what happens. You start to distort the drawing. Okay, and very difficult to come back from that, I can tell you that now. So, here, all right. Now, because that one was selected, you'll find that the face in here is selected. You have to deselect it. So clicking out into space or using the escape key, clicking into space will be how you deselect it. You can go back to your move tool and then grab something. If you see this one here, as soon as I come across to there, it grabs the whole object. And now I can move that object. I can bring it in and align it to something. I can stick it to a point here, the end point, for instance, and I can move it. You notice some of these little cursor, these red icon sections. All right, that's added functionality to the. And you can also have a look at the bottom. Anytime I select a tool, if you have a look down here, it tells you option, what it can do. So option will cycle, copy, stamp, or move. So if you see here, 3 different, so just move, that's move plus. And the last one is stamp. I'm not familiar with stamp. Let's have a look at what stamp does. Ah, here we go. So it'll just keep doing as many as you need to. Okay. So where that would be useful, let's say you've already used grid lines to map out where your stumps and piers are for a house. You can just stamp them all in place. Bang, 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 bang. Or you can use the array tool, all right, which is generally, the array tool is only in a straight line. So if I go option till I've just got the plus, I click on something, move across, then I don't click anywhere else, I do times 5, enter, and it'll add 5. Let's clear out of here and see what it's done. I'll delete these ones. So it's done 5 in a straight line. The other thing you can do with that is, let's go erase, let's get rid of some of these. All right, the other thing you can do with this is instead of times, let's say you haven't calculated, you know you want 5 in a given space. Your given space is already drawn. Let me get rid of these. So what you can do is, let's say for argument's sake, tape there, that's the end point. And I need 4 inside that end point and I don't want to calculate it. So instead of doing move option for there, instead of doing this across here and trying to here times 4, enter, no, that's not quite right. Option there a little bit further, times 4, enter, not quite right. Okay, you don't have to guess or calculate anything. All you've got to do is options, so I've got a little plus, I can come click on here, drag it all the way out and lock to that line and drop it down with another click. Then I use the divided key, the division key on my keyboard, which for me has a question mark above it. Might be different for Windows users. So I click divide. If you see down the bottom here, the divide has come up. Divided by 4. Enter. No, let's try that again. Move, option, click there. Divided by 4, enter. And there you have your 4 spaces. So you've got 5 units, but you've got your 4 spaces. So that's where that would be useful, the array divided or times, as opposed to using the stamp tool, which I would do manually. I'd use that if I already had maybe guidelines that I could snap to in that way. All right, but what I would find easier to do would be to do an array in this direction, then move, option, and then do an array times 4 in this direction. I find, because generally stumps and pairs will be set out geometrically, I tend to find that that's the much easier option. All right, and as you can see here, I've inadvertently copied over that one there as I've gone across. So be mindful what you're picking up, especially when your drawing starts to become really populated. Delete. Okay, scale tool. Rotate tool, rotate. Right, this one is particularly confusing. Your rotate tool will present with the protractor. All right, but it doesn't click on anything but geometry. The reason being is the rotate tool will rotate geometry. It won't give you a guide. It won't give you a guideline. It'll show you a guideline to show you the axis, because you can also come out here and lock, inference lock on something. All right, if you have some geometry out here, you can lock to an end point or a midpoint or whatever, if that's what you need. All right, but that's all it does is rotate items. You can rotate from the center. You can rotate from a point there. Okay. Now it's got already increments, segments of 5 degrees. But again, you can just, without clicking, enter an angle 43.5 degrees, enter, and it'll actually rotate it to that exact increment that you want. So we can draw very accurately in SketchUp. All right. That's different, Control Z, that's different to the tools, to the protractor. But you see how they look exactly the same. The protractor's function is to give you a guideline. Okay, the tape measure function will give you a guideline, but the guidelines are locked to be parallel to a line or parallel to a axis. So I'm going to show you. So I'm going to rotate this so it's out of alignment to any axis. And then I'm going to pick up the protractor from tools, the protractor tool. And I'm going to click on something and create to an angle a line. All right. Whereas the tape measure tool, T on your keyboard, I've chosen, some of them are control something or other. I generally use the ones that are R for rectangle, T for tape measure, L for line, P for push pull, M for move. The only keyboard shortcuts that I use to help me go fast and not have to remember too much is the ones that are just E for eraser, and that makes it really simple and easy for me to do. So if I go T for tape measure, I click a parallel line. I click a parallel line. I can click a parallel, well, that was a perpendicular line, but I can click a parallel line to that line. Okay? Parallel line, you've got different axes as well. I can come straight out on this plane, which I think that's the blue plane. I'm locking to the blue plane. That's the green plane, so I'm locking to the green plane. That's the red plane, so I'm locking to that red plane and coming out in that direction. Okay, so your modifier keys are helpful. And the down arrow is, you can see there's purple. That's inferencing locking to this axis, so it remains parallel to that one. Okay, so protractor and tape measure will give you, E for erase, will give you guidelines. Okay, but protractor and rotate, while the tool looks identical, they have different functions. Some of you are getting stuck. You're trying to put a guideline, for instance, let's say we want to go up along here 22.5 degrees for the roof pitch. We want to click here, click there, but now we're rotating. Okay, we wanted a guide, all right? But we're never going to get that because we're using the rotate tool, not the protractor. If we come up and hit the protractor tool, all right, if down arrow, we can come up 22.5, enter. And now we have a guideline at that exact angle. So that's where those can become tricky. Erase. All right, the scale tool. Now, if we get the scale tool, we either pre-select it or we select it when we hover over it, and you'll see these nodes come out. Now, the measurements that you put in here will be scaled. So if you do 2, let's say I click here, drag out, and I type in 2, it'll be 2 times bigger along that line. If I click this line, for instance, I will only grow like push-pulling. I'll only grow, let's say I want to go 3. Enter. It'll go 3 times bigger. Control Z, Control Z. That's your scale tool. All right, your scale tool can sometimes distort geometry. All right, because it actually scales it. Let's say you drew inside this group, you've got 50mm pipes coming down. Well, when you scale them out, they'll no longer be 50mm pipes. Okay, you will scale it out to suit what you need, but you will change the dimensions of that. So just be mindful how you're using the scale tool. If you're repositioning a window for the purposes of an illustration, beautiful. It doesn't matter. No one's going to go in and measure that tight, but be aware of that. The next one is the flip tool. This one in AutoCAD is called mirror, I believe. This one's pretty cool. O for orbit. I come around. Escape to come back to it. Now what will happen is this will flip this image, which is, you can't really tell like that. Let's do rectangle, push pull, line. Okay. Make a group. All right. So let's say we want to go back to the flip tool, and it'll show us all the planes. So the green plane, the red plane, and the blue plane. And what it will do is it'll mirror this. Okay. So for instance, if I click this one, you see that it's flipped it it's mirrored it along this plane. Let's say I want to mirror it, but I want to mirror it from this point. I can click and drag this one up to here, and then it'll mirror it, flip it up to here. If I use my Option key, you see there's a little plus there, I will copy a mirrored version. Okay, so see for instance it's still flipped there. I want to click on that one and I've copied. So now there's two, the original one plus that one. Let's say I want Option there, so I select both of them. Now I go to the flip tool, and let's say I want to do on the green axis, but I want a plus, I want to copy them mirrored. So I hit the Option key and see how it, for Windows users, it'll be a slightly different modifier key, but there's at the bottom left hand side of your keyboard, there's only a few buttons. Click them to find out which one it is, or down the bottom here, it'll actually tell you. So because I'm doing it in Mac, it says Option. If you're in Windows, it'll tell you what the modifier key is. And here you've got arrows keying to flip about a plane. Okay, so your arrow keys are a modifier key and my Option key. In Windows, it'll tell you which one it is here. So I want to copy these. So I've got the plus, and I want these two to come all the way over. So if I grab there and drag it over till I click on the egg point and let go, now I've copied them over. So that's the mirror tool. Okay. All right. Orbit tool. O for orbit. Okay, that helps you to just drag and move around the image. Your scroll wheel on your mouse will zoom in and out. Pan, all right. Now, orbit is O on your keyboard. Pan, it's got a little icon of a hand, all right. And the pan is H for hand on your keyboard. And that'll help you just to pan across. Okay, so orbit, you'll pivot around a point, and H for hand, which is the pan tool, will pan you across. Okay, I think that's a fair bit for one. I'm going to upload this video. There are more keys on here. So for instance, I'll just go quickly. I've got here my standard views. So I can go there, I can go plan view, I can go face, other elevation, other elevation, other elevation, all right, and from underneath. So reflected ceiling plan, for instance. Now, over here at camera, it's also good to know with the camera, if you come down, you've got parallel projection. A lot of people who are used to drawing CAD in ArchiCAD or in Revit or in AutoCAD are generally used to doing parallel projection rather than perspective. For me, my autism makes it easier for me to visualize in perspective, but some of you might be more used to this view where it respects so when it goes back, it respects this dimension here is the same. It doesn't taper off as a perspective would. So then the good thing about this one is if I go to my standard view, to my top plane view, you'll see that that's it. I just see the geometric faces. Whereas if I'm in perspective, I will see the inside reference faces. That's a reason why sometimes architects and that prefer to be in the parallel projection, so that when you use your elevations, and there is a use case for being parallel projection that I use instead of perspective, because I prefer to draw in perspective, but when it comes to preparing for my elevations for my documentation, this one will, parallel projection will be the one that will set it to. Okay. All right, that'll be it for today and for this one, and please reach out with questions if anything I've done was either too rushed, incomplete, or not clear. Thank you.